If your toddler follows you from room to room, struggles to play alone for more than a few minutes, or melts down the moment you step away, I want you to know something important before we begin. This is almost never about personality. What neuroscience shows us is that the developing brain between the ages of 0 and 5 is extraordinarily sensitive to patterns. Repeated experiences, even small, daily ones, literally shape the neural circuits that govern independence, emotional regulation, and confidence. And here's the part most parents don't hear. Some of the most common, well-meaning parenting habits are quietly reinforcing dependence in ways that are completely invisible in the moment. The good news is that once you understand what's happening in your child's brain, the adjustments are simple. You don't need a new parenting philosophy or a complete routine overhaul. You need to recognize 4 specific patterns and shift them. That's what this video is about. Let's begin. Mistake 1: interrupting independent play. Picture this: your toddler is sitting on the floor, completely absorbed. Maybe they're stacking blocks, arranging small toys, exploring a container, or turning an everyday object over in their hands trying to figure out how it works. Their eyes are focused, their hands are busy, they haven't looked up in a few minutes. From a neuroscience perspective, something remarkable is happening in that moment. The prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain responsible for sustained attention, planning, and executive function, is being actively exercised. The brain is building what researchers call intrinsic motivation, the ability to find reward in an activity itself without needing external input. And then, naturally, as a loving parent, you walk over. You want to connect. You want to show interest, so you say something like, "Wow, look at that tower you're building," or "Oh, that's so creative, what is that supposed to be?" It comes from a genuinely good place. But here's what happens in the toddler brain the moment you speak: everything stops. Because you, the caregiver, are the single most powerful stimulus in your child's environment. Your voice, your presence, your attention immediately outcompetes any toy, object, or self-driven activity. The child drops what they're doing and comes to you, and in that moment, independent play ends. Now imagine this happens 5, 10, 15 times a day. Over weeks and months, the brain registers a consistent pattern. Being alone with an activity is temporary. The real reward comes when the parent shows up. The child's nervous system begins to anticipate that interruption and stops investing deeply in solo play at all. Psychologists call this the interruption trap. What feels like engagement and warmth from the parent is actually training the child's attention system to look outward for stimulation rather than inward. The solution is deceptively simple: observe without interrupting. When your toddler is in a flow state, deeply engaged, self-directed, resist the urge to comment or engage. Just watch. Let them remain in that absorbed state as long as possible. When they naturally pause and look toward you, that's your window. Respond warmly, acknowledge what you saw, ask about what they were doing. But let them initiate that moment. With consistent practice, you'll notice something powerful. The periods of independent play get longer. Your child's capacity for sustained focus grows. And over time, the need to cling to you as the primary source of stimulation begins to decrease naturally. Mistake 2: praising results instead of effort. This one is subtle, and it's probably the most researched mistake on this list. It has to do with how we praise our children and the neuroscience behind what different types of praise actually teach the developing brain. Here's the typical scenario. Your toddler runs over holding a drawing, a block structure, or a completed puzzle. They're beaming. You respond instinctively, "You're so smart," or "That's perfect, great job," and your child lights up. It feels like exactly the right thing to say. But decades of research, most famously from psychologist Carol Dweck at Stanford University, show that this type of praise has a hidden cost. When children consistently receive praise that focuses on outcomes, intelligence, or fixed traits, their brain begins to link self-worth with performance. The reward circuit that gets activated is tied to external validation, and it becomes the primary motivator for future behavior. What this looks like in practice: the child starts seeking your approval before they begin a task, not after. They check whether you're watching. They look for your reaction before deciding whether something is good or worth continuing. Instead of developing intrinsic confidence, the internal sense of "I can figure this out," they develop a dependence on external confirmation. And there's a second consequence that directly affects clinginess. Children who are raised on result-based praise begin to avoid challenges because failure in front of others means losing the praise they've come to depend on. So instead of exploring freely, taking risks, and tolerating frustration, all the behaviors that build independence, they stay close to the parent, where they feel safe and validated. Dweck's research introduced the concept of the growth mindset, and the application to early childhood is direct. When you shift praise from outcomes to process, from "you're so smart" to "I noticed how long you stayed focused on that," you activate completely different neural pathways. You're rewarding effort, persistence, and strategy. You're telling the brain the work itself has value, not just the result. Practical examples of process-based praise: you tried that a different way when the first one didn't work. You stayed really focused even when it got hard. I saw you take your time with that. That takes patience. These phrases teach children that competence is built, not inherited. And a child who believes that can face challenges alone without needing you beside them to confirm they're doing okay. Mistake 3. Restricting safe exploration. The toddler years, roughly 18 months to 3 years, represent one of the most intensive periods of sensory-motor development in the entire human lifespan. During this window, the brain is building its spatial map of the world. Every object a child touches, examines, drops, stacks, empties, fills, and manipulates is generating new neural connections in motor cortex, in sensory processing, in cause and effect reasoning, in problem solving. This is not casual play. This is the brain doing its primary developmental work. The challenge is that most home environments are not designed for curious toddlers. There are fragile objects, important paperwork, electrical cords, sharp corners, items that belong to siblings, things that are expensive or sentimental. So parents find themselves saying dozens of times each day, "Don't touch that, leave that alone. No, that's not for you, put that down, come away from there." Every one of those corrections is individually reasonable, but cumulatively they create something the brain registers as a consistent signal. The environment is not mine to explore freely. Before I act, I need to check with an adult. That pattern, act, be corrected, seek permission, repeated hundreds of times across the toddler years, wires the brain to be approval-seeking before initiating. The child doesn't learn to trust their own impulses. Instead, they learn that safety and correctness live near the parent, so they stay near the parent. This is one of the most direct neurological pathways to clingy behavior, and it's built entirely from small, individually justified no's. The well-established solution is what developmental educators call a yes space. A yes space is a physical environment, a corner of the living room, a gated play area, a fully child-proofed bedroom, where the default answer to any exploratory impulse is yes. In this space, the child can touch, move, stack, dump, and experiment without correction. There are no fragile items, no forbidden zones, no invisible rules. In a yes space, the child's brain receives an entirely different message. This environment is mine. My curiosity is welcome here. I don't need to check with anyone before I act. Research on play environments consistently shows that children who have access to free exploration spaces develop higher autonomy, longer independent play windows, and lower baseline anxiety. When the world feels safe to explore, the child doesn't need to stay anchored to the parent as their only source of security. Start small. One room, one corner, one dedicated hour. Clear out what needs to be cleared. And then step back and watch what your child's brain does when it's given genuine freedom. Mistake 4. Solving problems too quickly. This last mistake is perhaps the most emotionally difficult to address because it runs directly against one of the deepest parental instincts we have. The instinct to relieve our child's distress immediately. Here's the pattern. Your toddler is trying to put on a shoe and they can't get it right, or they're attempting a puzzle and a piece won't fit, or a block tower keeps falling before they finish. They're getting frustrated. Their brow furrows, their breathing changes, maybe they start to whine or cry, and within seconds you step in. You fix the shoe. You guide the puzzle piece. You rebuild the tower. It's an act of love, but neuroscience tells us it has a cost. The prefrontal cortex, the brain's problem-solving and emotional regulation center, develops through a very specific process. Encountering a challenge, experiencing the discomfort of not immediately knowing the answer, and working through it until a solution is found. Neuroscientists call this productive struggle. It is not a sign that something is wrong. It is the mechanism through which executive function is built. When an adult consistently resolves challenges before the child has had a chance to work through them, that productive struggle never occurs. The brain doesn't get to practice tolerating frustration, generating alternative strategies, or experiencing the neurological reward of self-achieved success. Instead, it learns a different lesson. When things get hard, wait. Help will come from outside. Over time, this creates what researchers describe as learned helplessness, a pattern where the child stops attempting to solve problems because experience has taught them that they don't need to. And a child who expects external solutions to every difficulty will naturally stay close to the person who provides those solutions. The shift here requires you to tolerate something uncomfortable, your child's frustration. When you see them struggling, resist the impulse to immediately step in. Give them time. Watch to see if they generate their own approach. If they ask for help, offer guidance rather than solutions. What do you think you could try? Which part is the tricky part? What if you tried turning it the other way? This positions you as a thinking partner, not a rescuer. And the difference matters enormously to the developing brain. A child who solves a problem with a hint and experiences the satisfaction of figuring it out builds confidence that transfers. A child who is rescued builds dependence. One important note: frustration tolerance looks different in every child, and there is an upper limit. You're not looking for distress, you're looking for productive struggle. If your child is clearly overwhelmed, it is completely appropriate to step in warmly and calmly. The goal is to expand the window of tolerance gradually over time, not to leave them to struggle alone. What changes when you address all four? These four mistakes don't operate in isolation. They compound. A child whose independent play is constantly interrupted, who receives praise only for results, who lives in an environment full of restrictions, and who is rescued from every moment of difficulty. That child's brain is receiving a coherent, consistent message across hundreds of daily interactions. You need me to function. The world outside me is not safe. You can't do this alone. Reverse those four patterns and the message changes completely. The brain begins to build a different set of neural defaults. I can stay focused on my own. My effort matters. My environment is mine to explore. I can work through hard things. These aren't abstract virtues. They are specific, measurable neural circuits, and they are built or weakened by the everyday interactions between children and caregivers during the critical window of 0 to 5 years. You don't have to change everything at once. Start with the one that resonates most. Maybe it's staying quiet when your child is playing. Maybe it's catching yourself before you say "good job" and replacing it with something about effort. Maybe it's creating one small yes space in your home this week. Small, consistent adjustments in this window produce significant outcomes. The brain you're shaping right now is the one your child will carry into school, into friendships, into every challenge they face. Give it the chance to learn that it is capable.